everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Kind of following in line with our OCD or not video, we're going to do something similar and talk about, is this narcissistic or not? So we've got some situations prepared that things kind of similar to what we hear in session, and we just kind of want to talk about these behaviors, and so you can spot maybe which things are narcissistic and which things aren't.
Right, and I think one of the reasons too that it's important that we do this video is that so often now we have people come into session, and I think that even, with our friends and stuff, we talk about things and everybody's like, oh, they're such a narcissist, this was so narcissistic, right? Everybody throws around that word, and sometimes I think that that's getting thrown around in situations where it's not actually applicable. Like, yeah, maybe that was a jerk move, but it's not necessarily evidence that they're a narcissist, right?
Sure.
It's hard to differentiate. In my mind, I struggle with this, so this episode is going to stress me out. But
I think of your DSM in front of you.
But for me, it's hard to differentiate because I think we oftentimes want to see the best in others, and so we may not even recognize some of these traits, or we may over-recognize them, because you've got to differentiate it between, I think all of us have a fair amount of, I want things the way that I want them. And I think that that's a normal thing. So we've got to get to that clinical level of definition.
Right. Is this narcissistic or not? Right? All right.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
I don't know.
Well, here we go. Here's
Let's
your first scenario. Okay. You hate flowers, but your significant other sends elaborate bouquets to you at work once a week, every week. You feel embarrassed, but all of your coworkers tell you how lucky you are. When you ask him to stop sending the flowers, he tells you that you're ungrateful. You're lucky that I love you so much. Ask anyone else, and they'll tell you how lucky you are. Narcissist or not?
Wait, did you say that's what he said to you?
That's what he says. Yep, that's what he says.
You want me to answer first?
Yeah, you answer. Uh-huh.
I would say yes. There's a couple of things that stick out to me. First being like, obviously you don't like flowers, but he keeps sending them, and he knows that, I'm assuming, that he knows you don't like them. And that the coworkers respond, right? They're like, oh, you're so lucky. And then the second part, like when he's saying, you should just be so grateful that I'm so great. And everyone else would tell you that too, right? So when we look at narcissism in relationships, a lot of times I think it looks like that. Yeah, maybe you don't get it, but look, everyone else around you, your coworkers are so jealous that I send these flowers, and everyone else we talk to would be so jealous and you should just be grateful for what you have because I'm so great. So it's looking for that external validation, not from the partner, but from all the people around her in her life.
So that's kind of that need for admiration of others.
Yeah.
I can see where you're going with that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think about this scenario is that if it was really about the person showing affection by sending flowers, why does it have to go to work? Why is that being delivered so publicly and so that everybody else sees it, right? This also happens sometimes with social media. Somebody will do something nice for their significant other, and then it's all over social media, and the social media depiction of it is even bigger than how nice it actually was for the other person to receive, right? It's all about the show. It's not so much about what is fulfilling in the relationship and in that connection.
The other piece that sticks out to me that I asked you if that's what he said, reread that. What did he say to her?
He says, you're lucky that I love you so much. Ask anyone else and they'll tell you how lucky you are.
I think it's the second piece of that for me that seems one of the things that we know about narcissism is when the admiration that they feel they deserve is not being given, then they become critical, right? I may like to joke a lot about, you're so lucky you married me. You have no idea how lucky you are, right? But then when it becomes, just ask anyone else how lucky you are, that doesn't feel like a joke anymore. And that doesn't feel like, you're becoming critical because you're not recognizing how important I am. And that's the admiration component.
Yeah, I think there's like this era of, and I think it goes into other conversations with someone who's narcissistic, not just this, but kind of this attitude of like, you don't agree with me just because you don't get it. If you understood, you would definitely agree because I'm definitely right. Like, there's not any area or any room for disagreement. It's just you obviously don't understand, or you would definitely agree with me.
Right. These are the types of scenarios that we hear a lot from our clients when they come into therapy. And some of you may be sitting going, well, so what? Like, they gave you flowers for you, right? But the thing is, this creates this very strange situation because as the person on the receiving end of that, you do have this kind of like, well, should I feel grateful? But I don't actually like this. This isn't actually connecting for me. This isn't actually what I need from my partner. And yet they're telling me that this is what I need and that I should be so grateful and I'm so lucky. And it messes with your head when you start finding yourself on the receiving end of things like this particular scenario. So, okay, are we ready for number 2?
That's a good one. Yeah, let's do number 2.
Number 2. You've had a bad day and just want to spend some time with your best friend. When you arrive home, you find that they've already made plans to go out with their other group of friends without you. You tell them about your day and ask them to hang out with you instead. They tell you that they already have plans, so maybe you should go visit your mom. It's like they don't even get how upset you are. Narcissist or not?
Your turn.
My turn. Well, looking at it from a very analytical perspective, and maybe too much DSM and not just normal human eyes, I would say no. I would say this can look at... I would say no.
I would also say no.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
Okay. Do you agree no?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree no.
Okay.
Well, she wrote the prompt, so she gets
So she gets to decide. I would say no because again, I go analytical, right? So if I look at the criteria for narcissism, this can look like a good, healthy set of boundaries. Look, I'm really sorry. I would like to go or I would like to stay with you, but I have made plans and commitments elsewhere. Maybe your mom can be a support for you. Now I know I'm adding to what that scenario might look like, but I didn't see self-critical or critical of others. I didn't see a need for admiration. I didn't see grandiosity.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of those things, although this a little bit insensitive of, well, just go talk to your mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe this, because one of the things that I think happens sometimes is that people see this and say, well, that's a real lack of empathy, right?
Yeah.
And like maybe there is some of that in there, but not necessarily. I mean, really, it might be that they do care that you're having a bad day, but this is already their plans, and it's not their job to take care of you and make sure that your emotional state is a good and happy and healthy one. That's actually your job to figure that out. And sometimes we don't like that. We want our friends or family or significant other to be the one who steps in and helps us to take care of our own emotions. And so we might not like some of this, and some of this boundary setting might be harsh and might feel insensitive or unempathetic or something like that. But it isn't necessarily narcissistic.
Would it also be safe to say that if you have had a hard day at work, expressing your needs and somebody setting a boundary might feel more harsh than it actually is? Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that would be my other thought too, which would be why it is not necessarily narcissistic, is it may feel harsh and it may be a little bit harsh, but I don't know that it meets clinical level of narcissism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue lies more in the expectation that other people should drop their plans if you're having a hard time. I'm sure there are probably some extreme situations where that's the case, but
For sure.
for the most part, I think it's a totally normal interaction with somebody. Like you said, with maybe a healthy boundary to say, I wish I could, but I've got these plans. Maybe here's some other options for you.
Yeah. All right, here is our third and final scenario. So you go on a first date, and the person you're meeting is immediately charming and charismatic. They suggest the menu item that is best, and you end up loving it. It's such a great experience that it's easy to overlook the time that they actually snap at the server for getting something wrong. They make you feel really special and important, and by the end of dinner, you leave feeling like you found your soulmate. Narcissist or not?
I'm going to say yes.
That's where I'm leaning. I'm trying to convince myself of no, which I feel like I do a lot.
Well, tell us why yes.
Well, I think so. A couple weeks ago, I did a video about like, are you dating a narcissist? And a lot of what I had read was about kind of this like first date kind of things. And with that, kind of with the lack of empathy, the sense of grandiosity, the self-importance, comes like a mistreatment of people that are quote unquote lower than them, right? Beneath them, like a service person, like a waiter or waitress. And so that part really sticks out to me, right? That he snaps at the waiter, but he's so charming to you, right? So there's that, this person is beneath me and therefore they don't need to treat them with a sense of respect. But also the like great first impression and the very charming and the like, I don't know, just I think that initial first impression is really good. But if that was like a genuine thing, maybe that interaction with the waiter wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting to note that narcissists often expect to get preferential treatment. So they'll insist on sitting at the best table in the restaurant. They'll insist that you get the very best menu item. They'll insist on...
Right, they decided what you were going to get anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll insist on better treatment from the staff than maybe they would expect for everybody else that's there. And they may shower you with praise and attention and even affection, maybe even a lot of physical affection for that early on in a connection or a relationship. And it can feel really exciting and really almost overwhelmingly good, but it actually is often a sign of kind of this love bombing an idea, and we'll talk about that in a future video, but it really is that feeling of like, wow, I'm so important, this feels so good, and they're so important, and look at all of these things that they can do and they can get me. It's kind of like a castle in the clouds, right? There's not really a foundation to it. And I'm sure that there are situations where the whole love at first sight thing is a thing, but I don't think that that's typical for people. Instead, if you feel that immediately drawn to somebody and it's that electric and powerful right out the gates, I probably would be really wary of it.
You'd be on your heels.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add other than what you guys have both mentioned in this, other than perhaps one characteristic that is not necessarily quoted in the manual, but that we can oftentimes see, is that they are very charming. They're oftentimes quite successful, although oddly enough, sometimes very dysfunctional in employment situations. But that level of charm and that level of attraction, or the fact that you loved the dish that he picked, right? That might be worth another video, because I do think there's a whole element there we haven't explored. But
right. Lots of times people feel bad that they're attracted to a narcissistic person, but they really are often very, very charming. Mm-hmm. And so it's not something that I think is fair to really beat yourself up about. I think most people are attracted to people who are really high on like kind of that narcissistic spectrum.
It makes me think of that, going back to that first example, kind of like in the sense of when the guy's telling his wife like, oh, everyone else would tell you like how lucky you are, right? And it's kind of that same idea of all these people probably would think that. They probably do. From the outside, they probably think that she's got a great catch, right? And from the outside or the immediate first date, they probably think, yeah, this is awesome, because they do make like that great first impression. And I think if you're only interacting with them at a surface level, they probably are really charming and fun and nice until you push any deeper than that. But
right.
Good scenario.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this video. We'll be talking more about these kind of topics, so like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more, and we'll see you on the next video.
Thanks.
See you next week.